Okay, so the first question we have is, why do we even have an MLS? Well, if we go back in history, many years back, 50, 60, 70 years ago, brokers had their own book of business. And so each broker would have their listings and they would try to sell them. Consider it like going to a car dealer. If you wanted to look at cars, you'd go to the Chevy dealer to look at Chevys, you go to the Ford dealer to look at Fords. And you couldn't go to the Chevy dealer and say, I want to buy a Ford. Well, the same kind of thing was happening in real estate. And after a while, some of the brokers said, well, you know, I've got a client that's looking for a house that matches up with one that you have listed. Could we work out some kind of agreement to share some compensation? And so they started doing that on an informal basis. And then they said, this kind of works. Let's try to put this together on a more formal basis. So the MLS was created to have the spirit of cooperation and collaboration between brokers. And the most important thing for all of you is it's an agreement to share compensation. So it's cooperation and compensation between the brokers in town that can do that.
Screen, please.
That can do that through the MLS.
Okay.
So how do all these rules and regulations and things get going? Well, we have an MLS committee. We have committee chair and a dozen members or so. They meet every month and talk about the rules and regulations and the policies and the costs. They set the dues. They recommend improvements, talk about technology things, and recommend new programs, and then set up whatever training we need to do and things of that sort. So they've made the decision that we use Flex MLS as our provider, things of that sort. So it's a group of your peers who serve as the multiple listing committee. Now, we have that locally, but there's also an MLS committee at the National Association of Realtors, and they come up with model rules that then get passed down to the California Association of Realtors, who have an MLS committee that then massages the model rules to say, let's make sure they conform to California laws and things. And then our local committee makes changes and things to those models that come down from up above. But at every step of the way, these decisions are not made by somebody in ivory tower. It's made by your peers that are serving on these various committees at the various levels. So one of the things that we have for you is breakfast at the beach. Then I have parentheses rock. And the reason for that is we were meeting at the Rockwood Women's Club while the Cabrillo Arts Pavilion was being remodeled. So it's now ready for us, but unfortunately, we can't have large gatherings. So we're not meeting there yet. We're doing our breakfast at home these days using Zoom. But when we get back to having them, so right now this is still happening second Thursday of every month, starting at 8:30. We normally provide you a hot breakfast at the meeting. So now it's up to you to provide yourself a hot breakfast during the meeting. And then we have announcements from you and the affiliate members. You get a chance to come up and say, let me tell you about this new listing that I just took, or let me tell you about a buyer need that I have. I have a client that's looking for a house that has these features, and then other agents can then tell you about those and things. At every meeting, I see people making connections in the room. And then we'll have speakers of various types depending on the topics, and a drawing once we get back in real life for $100 cash. And for some of you, it would maybe be your first $100 you ever earned in real estate, just by getting there on time and dropping your card in the fishbowl. But the most important part of this for all of you is the ability to talk about your clients' needs and your new listings. So no matter how good your internet marketing is, word of mouth still can't be beat. It's still, if you want to make an impression on somebody, you tell them about something, it'll have a much greater impact than just having them find it in the MLS compilation and things. So we typically have at those meetings 100, 125, 150 people. And you might be saying, yeah, but I have trouble standing up in front of 100 people and making a presentation. Well, there's something you can do, and that is you can get over it, because it's in your client's best interest for you to do that. And I say that tongue in cheek. I mean, you do need to get over it, but there is a way to do that too, is we have Toastmasters that's offered here on Wednesdays every week. Not right now, but once we reopen, that will be available to help you with public speaking if you have those concerns. But the main thing is you get that opportunity to get out there and meet your fellow agents prior to going out on tour those days to see new properties and things. So it's a great meeting. Yeah, you want to attend. Even when it's virtual, you still want to be attending. As a matter of fact, coming up this Thursday is the speaker is going to be Mark Schneep of the California Economic Forecast Project, and he's going to give us a recap of what's been happening in our market. And I think it's very important. I'm really looking forward to hear what Mark has to say about the effects of COVID, where we stand, what's happening with the marketplace, et cetera. So I highly recommend you be there this Thursday morning. So watch for the announcements if you haven't already seen them. So I already mentioned about the rules coming from the NAR and CAR. And so that's already been covered. We have a document that we normally hand out called Pathways to Professionalism. Stephanie can email that out to you afterwards. So you want to look through that. It'll talk about respect for the public and property and your peers. It is a document that's used both within our the MLS and in the Code of Ethics for the Realtors. So we have selected to use Flex MLS as our database that we use for our the application that we use for our MLS. And we were one of the early adopters. That when we first did that, almost everyone around us was with Rapatoni, which is actually a local provider based in Simi Valley. And more recently, everyone around us has switched to Flex MLS. San Ynez Valley north of us, Ventura south of us, Conejo, Simi Moore Park have all switched over to Flex MLS. We've been very happy with it. It's called Flex MLS because it's flexible. We can add fields, we can make changes. Where some of the email MLS providers, you have to send in a request. They send you back a bid of how much it's going to cost to do it, and then it takes a month or two to get a change made. We can make changes on the fly in most of the functionality within Flex. Certain things do require some custom programming. But some of the features that we have, it has an automatic email function. So you can conduct a search, save that search, and now have it notify you anytime that a property comes up that matches your client's needs. So you're looking for a 4-bedroom house with a swimming pool in the Kellogg school area and you just can't find one. So you leave that search in there and now all of a sudden a listing comes up that matches that. You and your client will both get an email link to that property. So in the old days when I was doing this stuff, we had to search every day to make sure that we kept on top of it and didn't miss out and have somebody else buy the dream house for our client. But you can set up an automatic email function within Flex now. There's also the mass email function. I'm sure you all are aware of that because you get the bulk emails that come out saying, here's a new listing. Let me tell you about this one. This one's going to be held open at certain times when we can hold open houses again. Things of that sort. So that's a good way to put information out about your properties. Now, I'm sure many of you are saying, I'm feeling a little overrun by them. I get maybe 30, 40, 50 a day or whatever the number is that's coming out right now. And I'm afraid I'm going to miss an email from my client because I get so many of these other emails and they all get mixed together. So one thing you can do is you can create a separate folder for them. That's what I've done. I use Outlook for my email, and I just created a folder that says anything that says MLS member mail, from who it's from, put it into a separate folder. So I still get all of them. I can now just open that folder at my leisure and see them, but then all my other emails are segregated and not mixed in. So that's something you can do. You also, within Flex, because it's a flexible system, you can go into your preferences and you can say, turn off all rentals, turn off all properties for sale. You could say, I only want certain things, and you can be selective of which ones will come through to you. So there are things you can do on that mass email if you're feeling a little burdened by them, but it's good to be reading them all, because you're going to read about one day, and then the next day talk to a client and they're going to say, oh, I'm looking for something. You go, I just saw that coming available, and you're going to look like that expert because you're on top of the market by knowing the market, by keeping up with these emails. So Flex MLS also has good searching capabilities. You can search by map coordinates, school districts, almost anything that's in there you can search by. So say you have somebody that's more green-minded and they're looking for a house that has solar power. You can look for solar PV as one of the search criteria, and look for that. It all has within it a market analysis program. It has good mapping, and it has IDX capabilities. IDX stands for Internet Data Exchange, which is something that allows you to have the feed from the MLS to display on your own website. So you can have people come to your site to search for local properties. Now, one thing, if you do that, you cannot say search the MLS, because they're not actually searching the MLS, they're only searching the IDX feed, and the IDX feed is not 100%, because every seller has the ability to say, do not display my property on the internet. And if they've checked that box, then that property is not going to be in the IDX feed. So it would be false advertising to say search the MLS. So you want to say search for properties for sale in Santa Barbara or something like that. And then there's a mobile app that's available to you from Flex MLS. Oh, and by the way, on the IDX, there's a free IDX solution within Flex. And if you want more information on that, you can talk to Ani Pollock, our MLS director, and she can hook you up on that. And I'll show you in a bit where you can find more information on IDX. So we also have RPR. This is coming to us from the National Association of Realtors. And it's the Realtors Property Resource. Their goal is to have every property in the nation in their database. I'm not talking about every property for sale. I'm talking about every parcel of every property anywhere. They are well over 80% of the nation already in there. They have all of Santa Barbara County is loaded into their database. And so you can go into that site and search for properties, find out the details about them, whether they're on the market or not. So to set it up initially, you need to go to narrpr.com, as you'll see on your screen, and you can set up your account with RPR. Then once you sign in through Flex, it has single sign-on capabilities. So we have RPR deep linked with Flex. So what that means is you can, when you're in Flex, you can go just directly to RPR. But better than that, you pull up an address. You're at 123 Main Street. You're looking at the Flex MLS listing, and you're saying, gee, I'd like to get a little more background information on this property other than what the agent has said about it. You can click the RPR link, and it will take you directly to 123 Main Street within RPR. So we have a great resource for you there. So it has tax records, and it'll show what the county records are showing on there. It'll even give you voting districts and school districts and various things like that through RPR. The next thing that we have that's linked in through our MLS is called CRS, and it doesn't stand for can't remember stuff. It stands for Courthouse Retrieval System. So this is all the property tax records of Santa Barbara County that are showing up here, that you can now go in and say, I'm looking for who owns this property, for any property in the tri-counties. Ventura County, Santa Barbara County, and San Luis County are all in our system, so that you can pull up the data, look them up. You can create mailing labels for a neighborhood. You can find out if somebody's an absentee owner, who's actually the owner and what's their mailing address, and things to contact them. You can find out what property taxes people are paying. And importantly for you, that's a place where you will find the assessor parcel number, because when you take new listings, one of the things you need to put into the system is what's the assessor parcel number for that property, and you can pull that up through CRS. So when you go on your main search screens within Flex, there'll be a section that says tax search. You want to scroll to the bottom one, is CRS. We tried to put it on the top, but for some reason it causes glitches in the system. So just need to tell you, when you're looking for CRS, it's the best one of the tax searches that are there. It'll be on the bottom of the tax search screens. All right, let's talk about some rules and regulations you need to know about, all this good fun stuff. So first off, when you take a listing, you have 2 business days to enter that listing into the system per our rules. Now, what's more important though is the new rule that says you have 1 business day after to enter a listing after you've begun marketing it. So you might have a property that, let me just go to this. There could be exceptions. And the exception would be you take a listing, but it's not ready to be shown yet. Maybe they're waiting to put new carpeting in next Wednesday, or they're waiting to do some painting, or you need professional photographs taken or something like that. So if you take the listing and it's not ready to be put into the system yet, you get a certification form signed, and you'll find that in zip forms, and the form nickname is SELM. So you'll use that SELM form. It's a seller excludes listing from the multiple listing service is what SELM stands for. So you would have that form signed by the seller saying, I understand that I need to put this listing into the system within 2 days. However, please hold it out for this amount of time. It was happening that throughout the country, people were holding their listings out of the MLS for a significant amount of time and not putting them in at all into the MLS. In some areas, as much as 40% of the listings weren't hitting the MLS at all. They were having little private groups they're sharing them with and things of that sort. So NAR came out with a clear cooperation policy. We'll talk about that in a minute, but that's where we get this 1 business day to enter a listing after marketing the property to the public. So we'll give you more information on that in just a second. So the next thing is on the time frames is this one, is that you have 1 business day to enter a status change. So once a property has an accepted offer, within 1 business day, you need to enter in saying that this property has an accepted offer. It's now a pending transaction. If you don't do that, you're subject to being fined, and the fine is $250, and it's not a warning first and then a fine. In almost all cases within our MLS, it's warning first, fine if you don't follow through. On this one, we were having such a problem with people not changing their statuses to pending that the MLS committee, your peers, decided we want to put a fine in place. And they initially put it in at $100. And they were finding that a lot of people said, well, I'm willing to pay the $100. So they raised it to $250. So now we're getting better compliance of people. Because if you think about it, you don't want to be out showing a property and find that, oh, my client really likes this one. I'm going to call the listing agent because they want to make an offer on it. You call the listing agent and go, oh, that one's been in escrow for almost a month. Well, how good is that if we don't have accurate data? So the way we keep making sure we have accurate data is to have these kind of rules. So the next thing I want to talk about is that the listings are entered into our system through what we call a broker load system. Back in the day when I was first in the business, we had to actually fill out paperwork and bring it physically down here to the Association of Realtors and have someone put the listing into the system for us. And we'd have to bring a check along for them to do that for us. Now it's just done in your own offices. So what you need to do is check with your broker as to what broker load means. Because for some of you, it's going to be that the broker wants you just to do it. You are responsible for putting the listing in, making the status changes, etc. Some brokers want it to be an office administrator being responsible, and you take all the information into your broker, and then an office administrator puts the listings in. So check with your broker about what that means, but you do not have to bring anything to us to put in. If for some reason you want us to put a listing in for you, we will do that for a $50 fee, but usually it's done just directly. Okay, so here's the clear cooperation policy that was adopted by NAR. And by the way, if you're having the screen covered by the view of me or someone else, you can slide that around. you can shrink it. So if it's covering up what you're trying to read. So this policy just went into effect May 1st, saying that within 1 business day of marketing the property to the public, the listing broker must submit the listing to the MLS. So public marketing includes, but it's not limited to, flyers displayed in windows, yard signs, digital marketing on public-facing websites, brokerage websites, including IDX and VOW, digital communications marketing, if you send out email blasts to other brokers, multi-brokerage listing sharing networks. Basically, if you tell another person from another office that you have this listing, that's considered public marketing, and the property needs to be in the MLS. So why? Well, it's pro-consumer. So now it protects the seller's and buyer's best interest. I mean, if you think about it, isn't it always in the seller's best interest to get the greatest exposure possible? So we have about 1,650 members of our MLS. So is it in the seller's best interest to have 1,650 people trying to sell their house, or is it in their best interest to have one person trying to sell their house? Well, I think you'll agree that more is better for the seller. It's also flexible. It adds transparency to the home buying process, ensures that fully informed sellers about market exposure. Buyers have equal, fair opportunity to buy. We don't have any fair housing issues of, oh, well, you're only sharing it amongst a group and they happen to all be white people. And so therefore it could be considered discriminatory if you would display it only to a select group. Helps avoid liability issues, etc. So it's much better for the consumer, but it's also, as I mentioned, all these things are better for you also about not having discrimination and things, because the public should not be more informed than the MLS members. And when things were held outside the MLS, clients would call you and say, tell me about that house I just drove by on Chapala Street. You go, I don't know about that one. So let me look it up in the MLS. I'll call you right back. You look up in the MLS and it's not there. And so you have to call your client back and say, well, tell me where you saw the sign. I'll try to drive by it and find out more about it, because it was an exclusive listing, but it wasn't in the MLS. So that was not working for the agents. By holding MLS membership, there's an agreement to cooperate. I mean, that's part of the whole idea of having an MLS, is that we will share all of our listings with you if you'll share all of your listings with us. So that needs to take place. The purpose of MLS is to facilitate efficient marketplace. It eliminates the need to hunt for pocket listings, track down these lawn signs, go to Zillow or other social media posts to find out what properties are on the market. You know, as a member, you should be able to go into the MLS and find every property that's available for sale that's listed with one of our member companies. So one of the things that we did to help make this all work is we have a coming soon listing status. So the listing's not ready to be fully marketed. You're still waiting for your photographs, you're waiting for the carpet, those kind of examples. But you'd like to get a sign out there. You want to get some advertising going. Well, let's do it. Put it in as a coming soon. So there's a coming soon addendum that you're required to do, and you can find that on our website. And then it's not displayed on any third party or IDX sites. So it doesn't go out to the public yet. It's only letting other members know so that they can see that, oh, there is a listing coming up on Chapala Street. That's, you know, so if my client calls and wants to know about it, I can now find it. I can give them the basic information, etc. You can select in there to have it automatically become active. So you can set it up saying, I want it to become active on June 17th. So you just load that in at the time you put in the listing, you put in all the data, it's held as a coming soon, and then you don't even have to do anything on the 17th. It just switches over, becomes an active listing, and now it becomes fully marketed to all the outside sites, etc. We also created something called a privacy listing. Now, this is a listing type. The other was a listing status. I'll come back to that in a second. So this is where the seller doesn't want public marketing. And this was the reason we were getting from a lot of people of, well, I can't put the listing in the MLS because I'm dealing with a celebrity. I'm dealing with some high level person who doesn't want everyone to know their house is for sale. Well, okay, I understand the need for privacy, but how about the need for all of the members to know there's a house available? So if the seller says, I don't want public marketing, then you take a privacy listing. And there's an addendum required for that also that's on our website. It won't go out to third-party sites. It won't display on IDX sites, etc. And it doesn't require all the data to be put in. You need everything except the street number, street name, map location, and photos. So it might be that you'd have this listing that says, here's a $5.7 million property in Montecito, and here's the numbers of bedrooms and baths and information like that. It has to be in there. So the price has to be there, and the basic data has to be there. So now if you're looking for a property in that price range in Montecito, you can call that agent and get the specifics. But prior, those listings were never in our MLS at all. They would just be held by these private groups within offices and things like that. And so now everyone knows that there is a listing available. You just don't know exactly where it is unless you call, and you'll call if you have a buyer in that price range and neighborhood. So we think it's done a great job to give everybody the needs they have to protect their clients and the situations, but yet still fully cooperate with the clear cooperation policy that NAR has mandated that we all adopt. Okay, so let's talk about, I said I was going to come back to the fact, one's a listing status and one's a listing type. The way we had to set this up within Flex, there wasn't an ability to put a privacy listing status in. So it comes up as a different type. So when you're searching for properties, what that means is you're going to have to, when you search, you can search for all active listings for residential, and then you want to also include coming soons. But then you also would want to search, instead of the residential type of listing, you want to go into the privacy type and see if there's any privacy listings that match. So it's a little bit more cumbersome, but just be aware that you might find the perfect house for your client by searching those various avenues. At some point in time, people are going to have questions. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat. I don't have access to that right now, but hopefully Stephanie would be able to answer some of the questions as they're coming up, because she has multiple monitors. I only have one screen right now. And we'll see if we can answer your questions. So there's a chat function within here. So if I'm covering something too quickly, we'll get back to the questions later. All right, so the listing guidelines, there's public fields and private fields within the MLS. So public fields are the public remarks, the directions, the pictures, anything that's going to go out to the public through IDX sites, SBAOR.com, Zillow, Realtor.com, etc. But there's certain things that you cannot put in the public viewable areas because they go out to these sites. So you can't put the property owner's name, phone number, or address in the public remarks. Now there's a spot within the MLS that you do put that in, that you put in their name and their phone number and things, especially if it's going to be, they need to call the seller directly for showings. We have private remarks that would cover all of these issues. Showing instructions, including location of a lockbox, any reference to a burglar alarm, security system, gate codes, any reference to property being vacant, reference to the type of listing, compensation that's offered, those types of things. But most importantly, any agent contact information shall not be in the publicly displayed areas. Okay, that's all pretty simple stuff, except for a couple things. I'll get to that. So all of these things, all this grouping are all things that probably need to be in the listing, but they need to be in the private remarks, not the public remarks. Where you might get yourself in trouble is you have a new listing, the sign's already been put up, and you take a picture of the house from out front. It now has a sign that includes your company name and your name on it and a phone number. Well, that can't be displayed in the publicly viewable areas. And guess what? Those photographs are part of the public viewable areas. So you need to take pictures either before the signs go up, take the signs down as you take pictures, or take the pictures from an angle that doesn't show the company or agent information. So just be aware that that's not allowed to be in there. And the reason for that is on your IDX sites with your clients coming to see your properties, you don't want to have another agent's contact information there and have the sellers, your buyer, say, oh, I'm going to contact that other agent directly to see if I can work a better deal or something, even though you're the one that brought them the information. So you need to have that protected. You also, when you send out information to clients, you can send them the public version, so any of this information would not be viewable by them. So you can protect the fact that you're the one that has that information, but they don't. Okay, so what if we have these various rules and people aren't following them? Well, if listings are not in compliance, fines can be imposed. And I mentioned earlier that for most things, like say you have a sign that has your name on it, you'd get a call from Ani saying you need to take that picture down. And that would be that. As long as you do that within 24 hours, everything's fine. If you don't, you would then be fined $100. The exception is making those status changes. If you don't do that with it immediately, if you have a status change that isn't done within 1 business day, $250 fine is automatic. The other one is in the clear cooperation arena. If you market a property to the public and it's not in the MLS, the fine for that is $250 on the first day. Once you've been notified that it's in violation and you don't put it in the MLS, the fine on the second day goes to $500. Third day goes to $1,000. Fourth day to $2,500, then to $5,000, then to $10,000, then to $15,000. And the reason for that is we were getting calls from agents who didn't like this policy of having to put the listings in the MLS and say, what's it going to cost me if I violate this rule? Because they were going to make a business decision of, is it worth $100? Is it worth $250 or $500 to hold my listing out of the MLS? So we put in a system that is a fairly significant fine up front, but will keep increasing if they keep violating, so they can't just make a business decision. So another thing that's important is that we have your correct email address. It might be that you had originally given us a personal email address and now you're changing to a company email address, or sometimes people change companies and have different email addresses and things. It's important that your email address be correct within the association and the MLS. And the reason for that is, what if we email you saying you violated the clear cooperation policy and your fine today is $250? And then the next day we send one out saying your fine just increased to $500. But you changed your email and you didn't tell us. And now you're not getting those emails. Well, your fine's still clicking because the onus is on you to have an email address that's correct and that you monitor. So just be aware that it's important that we have an email address. The other thing that happens is all of the billing happens by email. So you probably all got a bill on Friday for your MLS, and separately for your Lockbox. If you have Lockbox access, your central lock bill would have been separate. Those were emailed out on Friday. If you aren't seeing them, you would need to check your junk mail or something to make sure they should be there. Information will also be going out on the message board about how to go in and check your bills, things of that sort. If you have any questions, you can put that in the chat to Stephanie and she can help you with the billing questions. Okay, so here's something. If we had the public remarks, what would be wrong with these statements? So, a beautiful, totally remodeled family home in a quiet neighborhood. Anybody want to unmute themselves and tell me anything in that first sentence that shouldn't be in the public remarks? Now, maybe things other than what I had talked about earlier, But feel free, anybody want to speak up. What's wrong in that first sentence? Anything that shouldn't be in the remarks?
Probably totally, because that's saying that everything is remodeled when it might not be all of it.
Thanks, Garrett. I mean, that's definitely one, is that a totally remodeled home, think about that for a minute. If it's totally remodeled, what does that mean? And I hear people say that a home was totally remodeled. Well, it would mean that maybe I took everything down to the studs and put in new wiring and new electrical, new plumbing, new drain lines, all of that, and then new drywall and new stucco on the outside. But it still has old studs, still has an old slab. So how would you call that totally remodeled? So extensively remodeled, beautifully remodeled, but don't use totally remodeled. Anything else? Anything else in that first one?
Family.
Yes, family. Yes, absolutely. To call it a family home, you're implying that someone should have a family to buy that house. And couldn't a single person buy it? A retired couple, or whatever. It doesn't have to be someone with a family. And so that is discrimination based on familial status. So that can't be there. So one question comes up sometimes is quiet neighborhood. Can you say quiet neighborhood? And the answer is you can, as long as it is. But sometimes you think, oh, this is a really quiet neighborhood. That's because you were never there when the train went by. Or you're calling it a quiet neighborhood and you don't know that the dogs bark every night at 2 a.m. Things of that sort. So be very careful. It's okay to call something a quiet neighborhood as long as it is, but you could potentially face some liability if you called it a quiet neighborhood and it turned out not to be. Okay, let's do the same thing. Go in the second sentence. Walking distance to All Saints by the Sea Church. Anything in there that's a problem?
Walking distance.
Yes, walking distance, because that could be discriminatory against somebody that's differently abled. Now on that one, there's a mixed feeling on that one. I have had attorneys from the California Association of Realtors give me a split decision. I've talked to multiple attorneys that's their job, is to know this stuff. And some of them say it would be discriminatory. Some say it wouldn't. I had the same discussion with attorneys at the National Association. Some said it would be discriminatory. Some said it wouldn't. You may be okay saying walking distance. You may not be. Do you want to be the test case to find out? I know I wouldn't. So I would just say it's close to, it's near, instead of calling it walking distance. All right, how about All Saints by the Sea Church? Is that okay to use that as a landmark? Anyone who hasn't spoken up yet? Well, I guess I'll just have to tell you then, it is not okay, because that could be religious discrimination because you're implying that someone of that denomination should be the buyer of this property. So be very careful about saying, oh, it's near the Jewish synagogue, it's near the Greek Orthodox Church, it's near the Catholic Church, whatever. You don't want to use things like that because that would be considered discriminatory. The one you could probably use would be to say it's near the mission, because the mission is a major historical landmark in this city. And it's not necessarily, if you think of the mission, you're not even probably thinking Catholic Church, even though it is. So anyway, keep away from using churches as your designate your location area. Seller is very motivated. There's actually no violation to say that. However, does the seller know you're saying that? Because somebody tell me, what did you hear when somebody says to you, seller is very motivated about do they want full price on that house?
No, they'll take less.
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly implying they'll take less. Thank you, David. But is that what the seller wants? Now, I've had clients before in my business where the seller says, tell everybody I'm motivated. I said, well, that means they're going to think you'll take less money. And they go, well, yeah, that's fine. I said, okay, then show them your motivation by reducing your price. That makes much more sense. Sometimes when it says seller is motivated in a listing, it's because the agent is motivated because they have an upcoming house payment that needs to be made or something, and they need to get this property sold. But be very careful on using motivation of the seller without the seller's express permission. Okay, we have commission amount to the selling agent plus an extra bonus if escrow closes by July 30th. Is that okay in the public remarks? Anybody?
No.
Nope, you're right, Marcia. No, it's not. I'm trying, it's Maria. See, I called you Marcia a couple times, I think. It's hard for me to read the little tiny print on these things.
That's okay. That's all. That also happens a lot.
Okay. So commissions cannot be in the MLS. But here's another thing. Well, let me talk about, first off, why are we saying X% and not putting a number on there? Because you are from different companies. And if you're ever dealing with someone from a different company, the only conversation you should ever have about commission is, how much would I be paid for selling that house? But you should never have a discussion of, we should all raise our commission rates. I think it's ridiculous that somebody else is advertising a property at this commission rate, whatever that happens to be. So whenever you're dealing with competitors, to avoid antitrust problems, you always wanted to say X% commission, etc. So that's why we have the X in there. Do not ever discuss price fixing issues, just saying what we should charge as commission rates with your competitors, because you can literally go to jail for that one. Okay, so we've got the amount of commission, but we also have an extra bonus if escrow closes by July 30th. So what if that's in the private remarks? Is that okay? And the answer is no, it's not, because it's a conditional offer of compensation. And compensation listed in the MLS must be the amount of compensation that would be paid to anybody under any circumstances that sells that property. So to say that it's gonna, if it closes by July 30th, you cannot offer extra compensation that way. Now, one thing I wanna make clear to you though, it's not illegal to do that. It's just violates the MLS rules. So if you had a situation, the seller says, I wanna give somebody a bonus because it's critically important to me that it closes by July 30th. You could notify every other agent in town that that's gonna happen, but you can't do it through the MLS. Which includes, you can't do it through the MLS bulk email. So, but you could do it through some other system. You could send flyers to the offices, whatever. I don't necessarily recommend it. I think if he wants to close it early, put a higher commission rate in there right off the bat, and then you can always change the commission as long as no offers have come in. So commission's changeable prior to offers. Once an offer has been written, you can't say, oh, now we're changing the commission down to something else. No, it was already a contractual agreement at that higher rate at the time the offer was written. So to say easy to show, property is vacant, gate code, phone number, etc., not in the public remarks. All right. So on the categorizing of listings, we have primary listings and we have secondary listings here. So not every MLS has such a thing as a secondary listing. Primary listing are listings that are in the correct district and property type. Secondary listings are things where, if any of you have been to our association office here on Chapala Street, this was at one time a house. It was a pretty magnificent house when it was built in 1906. So if you think about, where would you find big classic homes like this? It would all be in the Upper East, but there's a few of these properties that are actually west of State, because the divider isn't the freeway, it's State Street. So area 15 is east of State, area 20 is west of State. So say this was still a house and we had it on the market, I have to list it in area 20 west of State as the primary listing. But I'd sure like to market it in area 15, because if somebody's doing a search for houses like this, they may only search area 15. So I can pay an extra $40 fee and put it in as a secondary listing in area 15. And it might be that you have a property type that's different, that I have something that is a house with a small second unit, but I'm in an R2 zone, so I have to put that in. Since it's 2 units in an R2 zone, I need to put that under residential income. That's the primary place that it should be put. But maybe it would also be good marketing on behalf of my seller to put it in the residential section, because more people might find it there. So I would then be able to say, I'll pay an extra $40 and I'll put it into the residential section also. So you have those abilities here. Now you might say, but gee, I'd like to put it in a third place. Yeah, you can't do it. We had people doing that for a while, trying to put it in 3 or 4 times into different districts or different categories. Can't do it. It's only a primary and a secondary. And it's critically important that you check the box that says this is a secondary listing. Otherwise, you're falsely advertising there's 2 properties for sale when there's only 1. And also, secondary listings do not show up in statistics because we don't want to show that 2 sales took place when it was only 1 sale. So it's important you check the box. Now, I said you can pay $40. Well, how do you do that? Don't even worry about it. If you have the need, and it makes sense to put the listing in as a secondary, check that box on secondary listing, go ahead and put it in, and then our system will pick up that a secondary listing was entered, and you'll receive an invoice sometime within the next month. So just go ahead and do it, and we'll take care of the billing later. You don't have to say, oh, I have to put that in. I've got to run a check down to $40 before you'll put it in. No, just do it, and the bill will come out later. If there's a co-listing, only one listing can show as primary, and the agents need to decide who's going to have that primary listing. You can put in a co-listing as a secondary, but it's kind of silly to have 2 listings in the same district and property type just because there's 2 different agents wanting to be showing up as the first agent on the list. So the agent should just work that out, who's going to be the first one. And all of this is important for statistical accuracy, which is critical to all of you that we have a good, accurate database for you. By the way, if you have questions as we go along, feel free to just unmute and ask. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep rolling. Question I have for all of you is, can you advertise another agent's listing? Well, sometimes yes, sometimes no. So through IDX, the Internet Data Exchange, you have the right to advertise every other listing in the MLS unless that box is checked saying do not display on the internet. So you have automatic permissions. But one thing you have to realize is you do not have the right to market the property of some other broker without their permission. So you might be out on tour and you see a house for sale and go, ooh, I really like this house. I think it's a good value. I'm going to take a picture of it. I know I can't use the pictures from the MLS without the permission of the listing agent, because that's clear in the rules. But I can take my own picture, and now I'm going to go out on Instagram or on Facebook, and I'm going to post, this is a really good buy. If anybody wants information on this property, let me know. Well, you can't do it because that's somebody else's listing. Now, if you contact a listing agent and say, I would like to post this on my Instagram page, how would you feel about that? And they say, yeah, I'm okay with that. The more people that know about this house, the better it is for my seller. So by all means, go right ahead. Send them a confirming email and have them confirm back so you have it in writing in case you're ever challenged on it. But you could then do it, because what it says in the rules is you can't advertise another broker's listings without their permission. So if they give you permission, that's fine. And I'm going to say, I think it's probably half and half. About half the agents would say, no way can you do that because this is my product. I'm going to advertise it. I don't want you taking advantage of the work I've done to get this listing. And about half of agents in town are going to say, I think it's in my seller's best interest. Sure, go ahead and advertise it any way you want. But don't do it without permission. Another exception to marketing without the agent's permission, like IDX is an exception, are neighborhood market reports. It used to be that you could only put out information on sold listings when you were doing a neighborhood market report. You could say maybe there's 6 homes for sale that range in this price range, but you couldn't give specifics. The rules changed a couple of years back that allow you now in active listings to put out something in a neighborhood market report. Because many of you are going to have farm areas where you specialize in a neighborhood. So maybe you've got this area of 300 homes that you walk every week, every month, and you hand out flyers and brochures and things. You can go through that neighborhood and say, let me tell you what's happening in this neighborhood. And you can say, there's these homes for sale, there's these homes that are pending, and these homes that have sold. The ones that are pending, you can't tell what sales price is on them. You can only give what the active price is. And on the active listings, you have to put that there. Anything that has not closed, so actives and pendings, you must give attribution to the listing broker. So as an example, you say there's a house for sale at 123 Main Street. The price is $1,250,000. It has 4 bedrooms and 2 baths. And then the next thing it has to say, listed with Village Properties, Compass, Berkshire Hathaway, whatever company it happens to be, has to be listed there. So the rule says you can do it as long as the attribution of the company is on the same line in the same size font as all the other information. So you can't just put an asterisk and say down at the bottom, oh, these weren't really my listings, they belong to somebody else, and here's the list of who they were. No, it's got to be right there in proper attribution. Good news is you don't have to give the listing agent's name, just the listing company. Because if somebody else is farming that neighborhood from another company, you don't want to keep advertising the fact that, oh, look, they have most of the listings. So you don't have to put the company name, the agent name, but you absolutely have to have the company name on there, same size as all the information on the same line. Sold listings. If you have a property where you represented the buyer and you want to say, I just sold this property. Well, the listing agent can say they just sold the property, and they've always been able to. For a while, it was inappropriate for a buyer's agent to say, I just sold the property at 123 Main Street. The rules on that have changed, and it's now okay. You can send out flyers saying, I just sold this property when you represented the buyer. It might be good that you should say, I just represented the buyer of that property, but you don't have to. You can use the term just sold. You can even put up a sold sign in the yard. Now, very few buyers, once they buy that house, want to have a for sale sign in their yard, even with the sold sign on it. But every now and then you'll find a seller that says, sure, if you want to market yourself, I'm okay with that. And that is within the rules to put up a sign saying that you sold that property if you represented the buyer. The listing agent is not going to like it. I almost guarantee you will get a call saying that you're in violation, but I'm here to tell you, you're not in violation. That is allowable under the rules. Okay, so let's talk about some of the courtesies on showing. If you're the listing agent, be sure your showing instructions are accurate. Use the private remarks to elaborate on them if you have to do anything different. If your seller says, I only want it shown by appointment with you, and they're not willing to have a lockbox and things, you've got to be accommodating, because you're going to get calls sometimes when somebody says, I've got a client that's flying down from San Francisco. They're going to be here one day. I'm showing them 6 properties that meet their needs. I think they're going to buy something on this one trip. Can we show your house? And you're going, oh, well, that's when I was going to get my hair done or something like that. And it's like, it just doesn't really work for me. Well, think about what's in your seller's best interest. The seller's best interest is that that house gets shown. So not necessarily do you have to be there, but is there somebody in your office that could fill in for you? Or can you change your appointment? I mean, maybe you've got a doctor's appointment that you've been trying to get for 2 months and you're finally get it to go in to check that spot to see if you might have skin cancer. Well, you don't want to miss that appointment, but can you get that house shown in some other manner? So just make sure that people can get in. It's critically important for your clients. Remind the occupants to hide their jewelry, medications, and other valuables. I remember going to do an open house one time on one of my listings, and I walk in and the seller had a wad of cash just sitting up on top of his dresser. And it's like, man, you're just asking somebody to take that. So I took it and I stuck it down in his sock drawer under his socks, just so it wouldn't be missing when he got home. The problem was 3 hours later, my memory wasn't so good that I needed to put that back up there. So I forgot to put it back on top of his dresser, and I got a frantic call from him saying, somebody stole my money. And I said, no, I hid it. Look in your sock drawer, it's there. So, but just tell them to be careful on things like that. The other thing is medications. It's happened a few times in this town. It doesn't happen often, but people will go through medicine cabinets looking for prescription medications, especially painkillers. So be aware, tell your clients, don't leave stuff in obvious places. If you have painkillers, things like that, put them someplace in the house other than the medicine cabinet in the bathroom or something like that. If the lockbox is hidden, be sure to indicate that in the private remarks. If the lockbox isn't on the front door, make sure you tell people where to find it, because I've seen it where it's on a hose bib just 3 feet back behind the front door and agents can't find it. Well, there's no lockbox here. I can't get in. Make sure you tell people how they can get into the house, make it obvious, work to the lowest denominator of the 1,650 members of our MLS. If instructions are a lockbox, call first as a showing agent. Make sure you call before entering the property, and leave a message if no one's there. So say you're going to go out and show the properties today. You just got a call from your client and they're saying, I'd like to meet you at 10 o'clock and show some houses. Say, okay, let me set up some appointments. So I start calling and I'm thinking, well, I'm going to be there in 20 minutes, so I don't necessarily have to leave a message. Well, some people screen their calls. Maybe they're just out for a minute. Maybe they went out for a jog and at 10 o'clock, they're going to be coming home and jumping in the shower. You don't want to just show up at these people's houses. So always leave a message. So the message I would leave would be, hi, this is Bob Hart. I'm planning to show your house today at 10 o'clock. I know it's on Lockbox. I'll plan on using the Lockbox unless you tell me there's an issue with me being able to show today. And here's my phone number. And so I don't get a call back. Everything's fine. I use the Lockbox and I show the property. If it's Lockbox, call first. If it's Lockbox by appointment, I have to wait until I get a call back from them. I can't show the house until I make an appointment with them, and then I can use the Lockbox. So make sure you're following those showing instructions. And then especially on ones where you haven't actually spoken to somebody, you just left them a message, make sure you leave a card. I got to tell you, that's something that used to be standard in the industry and has been going away more and more, but it's just polite. Think about if you were selling your own home and someone had called and said, I'd like to show your house this morning at 10, you get home at 5 o'clock and you look around and going, did they show it? Did they not show it? How do I know? Well, if you left a card, they know you were there. So my recommendation is leave your card and write on it, thank you, and the date and time you were there. People will really appreciate that. And then also, if you've turned on all the lights and you've opened doors or windows, make sure that you close them up before you go. But what if you get there and all the lights are on in the house? It could be that they have multiple showings that day and the sellers intentionally turned on all the lights before they went to work, and they want to leave them on because they've got 6 different showings and they want to show their house in the best light. And if you're the first showing and turn off all the lights, you're defeating the purpose for them. So my recommendation to you is leave the house the way you found it. So if the lights were on, leave them on. If the lights were off, turn them on as you go through the house and then turn them back off as you leave. The other thing is sometimes a seller will say to you, oh, great, I'm here, I will leave, I need to go to the grocery store anyway, I'll take off during your showing, and I'll turn on all the lights for you. Then ask them the question, would you like me to turn them off when I'm done? Oh, that would be great, thank you. Okay, so now we've got the idea, we'll turn them back off. But absent that, leave them the way you find them. So here's another question. Say you showed the house and the back door off the kitchen is unlocked. You didn't unlock it, you know it wasn't. So do you now lock it or do you not lock it when you leave the house? My recommendation would be, first off, I'd call the listing agent. With everybody having cell phones today, I'd call the listing agent and say, hey, I just found the house with the back door unlocked. Would you like me to lock it or not? And put the onus on the listing agent. They might say, oh, the seller always leaves that unlocked, don't worry about it. Or, yeah, lock it up, whatever. But what if you don't reach them? My recommendation to you would be lock the house. Because my personal position, and this isn't any kind of rule to follow, but my personal position on this is I'd much rather have to go back and let somebody in their house because I locked them out then get the phone call that says, this is the police department, we're investigating a burglary at this house that took place, and the listing agent checked the lockbox and you were the last person to have been in this house. Yeah, I don't want that call. So anyway, use your best judgment on that, and see how to do it. But as you're showing property, most of all, think safety. That don't go to an empty property and meet someone you don't know. Get a name and callback number, leave this information at the office and have your cell phone with you. Go with another agent if you feel uncomfortable. As you're going through houses, let the client enter a room first. That if somebody does have bad intentions, they want you to go in, they could push you in and then close the door behind you. So if you leave them in front of you in full view of everything, you're in a safer position. Be aware of the property and its contents, and also use the safety feature in Central Lock. You can program Central Lock to say, every time I open a lockbox, if I don't positively respond within 5 minutes, automatically make a phone call out to whoever you is that you want them to call, saying that you're in trouble. So it has that feature on there, and you just have to make sure it, up to the 5 minutes, it gives you a warning saying, press here to confirm you're okay, and you do, and so now it doesn't call anybody, but it has an automatic feature in there for safety. But just think about it, be aware of your surroundings, etc. If you're holding an open house, take a look around the neighborhood when you get there. Is there anybody lurking around? Is there anything that's unusual? Things of that sort. We haven't had any serious problems in Santa Barbara, but there have been other places in the country, and we don't want to ever have any serious problems here. Okay, we mentioned the bulk email system. So how do you send out an email? Let me go back on that. So if you look on the upper left side, it says MLS/office broadcast sent to. You click on, if you want to send to everyone, you click on that first line that says everyone in Santa Barbara MLS. Then you move over to the right and it has an add button. So you have to hit the add button once you've highlighted it, and then it'll throw it into the recipient list for you. If you don't hit that add button, it's not going to go out to everybody. So make sure that you do that. So you have the ability to say, I want to send it to, and you can see they're in alphabetical order, everyone within one office. Or maybe I want to send it to everybody in 2 offices. You can do that. Just select them, add them, and put them in that recipient list. You also have every person within the MLS is in here that you could send to them individually. So you can go down and say, I'm going to send it to Joe Smith and Jim Brown or whatever, and just click on them and put them into the recipient list, and away they go. So it might be, you had 10 showings of your house and you just had a price reduction, you think they might want to know that. You can come in here, find them all, keep adding them one at a time into the recipient list, type in your email, send it off to them. So then under the subject, you put down, is it new? Is it a price change? Is it back on the market, etc. Oops. And then in the body, you want to put down information. So the subject, even though you say it's new, then it has a second line. That's where you'd want to put in the address and the price. Because I've got to tell you, there's people put in, best views in Santa Barbara. Yeah, but is it the best view of a condo at 900,000, or is it the best view of a house for 5 million on the Riviera? I'm not going to necessarily open that email to find that out. But if I know the address, I can tell what part of town that's in, and the price. Oh, I might have a client looking in that price range. I'm much more likely to open the email, and you probably would be too, if you know the price and the address. So I highly recommend you put that in your subject line, and then in the body, market like you're marketing to the public. Sell these agents on wanting to see this house, and put that in there. One thing I want to clarify too is I say, I would do this, I would do that. I don't sell real estate. I'm precluded from selling real estate because of my position. I can't compete with any of you. So as I say, I would do it this way. I'm just saying generically, I don't sell real estate right now. Okay, so if I'm sending out emails, can I say just listed but not in the MLS? And the answer is no, because this is an MLS email, so it can only be used for properties that are actually in the MLS. Seller doesn't want it in the MLS, but here's a description. No, these are finable offenses if you would put out an email that's for a property not in the MLS. Seller and agent are motivated, and there's a bonus if agent brings an offer by June 30th. Be a violation because you have a conditional offer of compensation. Somebody has a beautiful Cadillac or a computer set for sale or whatever. No, these are not want ads. This is marketing of properties. So it's what you can put in is properties for sale or buyer needs. I'd like to recommend a painter or a psychic or a weight loss instructor. Nope, we don't advertise services. However, here's something you can do is you can ask for services. Say you just had a physical inspection and the physical inspector says, you know, I think you might have some soils issues here and things. I really recommend you talk to a geologist, you know, as a further investigation on this property. And you're going, I don't know any geologists. How would I ever find a geologist to help me? You could just send out a bulk email to everybody in the MLS and saying, can anybody give me a recommendation for a geologist? I need one based on a physical inspection. And you would probably, within a half an hour, get a half a dozen people saying, contact Adam Simmons and here's his phone number. Because he's a well-known geologist in town, but it might be there's others also. But things like that. So it's okay to ask for help on services, but it's not okay to advertise one. And the reason for that is if you say, oh, I just had a great experience with this lender, and then put that out there, then some other lender is going to contact an agent and say, well, put me out too. And then all of a sudden the thing just gets overrun with lenders, the inspectors, et cetera. So you cannot recommend them, but you can ask for help.
Bob,
yes.
Can you use this for client needs?
Yes, absolutely. You can use it for client needs. That's a very good use for it. Thank you. That came in the chat, I assume, Stephanie.
Yes.
Good, good. So use that chat if you have questions, and Stephanie will interrupt me like that. So yes, it's a great place to say, I have a buyer looking for. It's a very good use of that. I have a friend who's looking for a rental, would be okay to put out there also. So rental needs, buyer needs, rentals available, properties for sale available, as long as they're in the MLS. All good stuff. Okay. So what if you need some help on something? If you look on your Flex dashboard, and this is the older style dashboard, but still in that bottom right-hand corner, you'll see those blue boxes with MLS links. So the first one there says member services. So you can click on that and it would take you into the member service section. We'll show you a little more about that in a second. Contact MLS. If you click on that, you can send an email directly to Ani, our MLS director, and she would be able to answer your questions and help you with your concerns, whatever, if you need help. The next one's the help button. And at the time we put this together, which was a couple of years ago, there were 87 videos or webinars and forums and users guides that were found under the help button. I guarantee you it's well over 100 today. And in many websites, you'll see a little help button and you don't know what it does and no one ever clicks on it. For Flex, that's where you're going to find the tutorials. That's going to teach you how to do something. You might be saying, I'm so frustrated because I can't figure out how to do this kind of search. Click the help button, search for that kind of search, bang, and it's going to give you all the information. We used to do some live classes, but we found this program can do so much that we only answered a few of people's questions with the live questions, with the live classes, but found that this is much better to click on that help button, get the help on the specific issues you want help with, and it's a much better learning experience. So use that help button within the Flex MLS program. And then down in the bottom right are the frequently asked questions. So Ani has taken the questions that have been asked of her over the years that are the most often asked and compiled the frequently asked questions. So there's a good chance that if you're, especially if you're newer to using these programs and things and you have a question, Somebody else probably already had that question once, and we have an answer for you right there. All right, so member services, I mentioned that. You click on that button, that will take you into our association website. So it has a little bit nicer look right now. We've upgraded that one also. But here's where you can go into your profile, your accounts. This is where you would pay your dues. So because of single sign-on, you can come right in through the MLS by hitting that member services button, or you can come in directly through SBAOR.org, which is our association website. But you can, most people just come in right through the MLS just like that. You can log in, change your personal information, pay your dues and fees, register for classes and events, things of that sort right here. So if you ever have one that says you need to sign up for a class, there's probably going to be a link with it that'll direct you right into here. Then you just have to sign in and do that. You can also check on your ethics requirements and see how you're doing and things there. So in your profile, you have the ability to add a photo if you'd like to do that. You can put in information about yourself. It'll autofill with your company name, office phone number, things like that. But you have the ability to make changes in here also on some things. You can't change your office here. That has to be done by your broker through us. So if you want to register for events, you'd come in, you'd look up education events, click on the one you want, come down, find the exact thing you want here, select it, and then it says add to the cart and pay. Even though it might be a free class, you're attending the lunch and learn, and there's no charge on that, but you have to register. You'd come in and register for it, put it in the cart and pay, and there's no charge, but you have to go through that step to make the registration be official. All right, so for forms, we don't have hard copy forms available on anything anymore. At one time, we had a whole room that was nothing but all the forms. Everything now is available through zip forms. So as an association member, you have zip forms included in your membership. And what's interesting, if somebody is not a member of the Association of Realtors, the amount it costs for zip forms is just about the same amount as it is to pay your dues for the local, state, and national association combined, is what the value of that zip forms is to you. So it is a great thing. CAR has been working diligently under this COVID-19 timeframe to make sure that you have the most up-to-date forms. Every time the governor's office makes a change in the requirements on showings, that they need this new pictogram posted at the doors, CAR is coming up with them for you and getting them out onto zip forms. I've served before on the standard forms committee at CAR, and I can tell you it's an arduous process to get a form changed and then onto zip form, and it normally takes months. And they've been doing them in a matter of days because you have to have this current information. So one thing I want to bring up to you too is a lot of people have this feeling of, why is CAR ramming all this stuff down our throat, like saying we have to clean the house after every showing. They're not ramming that down your throat. They're reporting on what the governor is ramming down your throat. So just be aware of that. CAR is your friend in all this, but it looks like they're making you do all this onerous stuff. No, they're reporting on it. They're creating the forms for you. They're making your job doable, but they're not the ones that are making the policy. All right, so we have Central Lock as our lockbox system. It is an optional thing for you, but if you're going to be in the business doing business, I don't know how you can not have a Central Lock account to get into the houses. Right now, maybe it's a little different. We're showing by appointments more and things, but as a general statement, you'd want to have Central Lock access. So Linda at our front desk can help you with any of the Central Lock sign-up things, buying lock boxes, things like that. Under our current situation, our office is not open to the public, but we could set you up, go through the billing and everything on the phone, and then leave a lockbox out for you to pick up. So it has easy access. You access it through your smartphone. We had for a long time cards that looked like the credit card with the chip on them, and that would open the lockbox. we're going now to just strictly smartphone access. It doesn't really, you don't need to carry a separate card. The smartphone gives you so much better capabilities than the smart card does. So this box has some really cool features. And one is that it has a one-day code. So you can, from your computer, generate a one-day code without having to go to the house and give someone access to that box. So maybe you have a painter that's coming into this vacant house and you need to let them in to do their painting work. You can give them a code where they can punch in the code, open the box, get the key out, and open the house. One of the things I want to mention is just because you can doesn't mean you should. That check with your broker about company policies regarding giving out one-day codes, because most brokers are going to have a policy of you can't give out a one-day code to anybody on an occupied house. You know, that so that somebody can now get into someone's home without the agent being with them and maybe steal something, whatever. So, but vacant houses makes a lot of good sense. So we have that capability. Central Lock also has some custom programming. You can put in time controls. There have been sellers that they have a baby that always takes a nap from noon to 2 o'clock. They can program that lockbox that even if somebody showed up and tried to come in, they can't get in between noon and 2 o'clock because they can put a time control on it. They can have a call before showing code that if it's lockbox by appointment, they can now program that to say, nope, even though if you try to come in using the lockbox, you can't get in unless you give it this additional code also that you got by making the appointment. So it eliminates these scenes where you have to have some other kind of lockbox to get people in, or these are the old style super boxes we had, but you can see that they would have multiple lock boxes on them sometimes. These new central lock boxes do it better. The most amazing thing about this is central lock boxes are much more reliable. I mean, Stephanie can tell you because she was responsible for these. It used to be daily people coming in saying my super lock box crapped out on me and isn't working, and I can't get into a house. So central lock's much better, and most importantly, it's less expensive. That it works out to $12 a month. We bill it on a semi-annual basis, and super was about $16 a month for a lockbox that didn't have all the same capabilities. So we're really pleased to be able to give you the central lock boxes here in Santa Barbara. All right, let's talk about some of the do's and don'ts on signs, things that you need to know. First off, I've already mentioned about taking pictures with your sign, that you don't want to have the information displayed. But here's some other things that are specific to Santa Barbara. The city of Santa Barbara has a downtown corridor designation that runs from basically from the ocean up to Mitchell-Terena Street, which is just the next street up from where I'm sitting right now at the association. And it runs from Chapala to Anacapa. So these three streets running up from the freeway and State Street all the way down to the ocean, you cannot put open house signs on those streets. Now, if you have a house that's for sale that's within that corridor, and there's very few because it's primarily commercial area, but if you did, you can put a sign out in front of that house that's actually having an open house. But you can't guide people to other open houses on these streets. Because what was happening is people would have an open house, say, on the Riviera or maybe on the Mesa or some area way away, would put their first sign at State and Carrillo because that's the highest traffic intersection in the city. And they wanted everybody to see their sign out there saying, here's where we are. So it got to the point where on a Sunday, you couldn't navigate that corner because there were so many open house signs there. So the city came out and said, no more, you're done. We're gonna just make it illegal for you to put your signs there. So just be aware of that. And they extended up this whole downtown corridor, no open house signs. Also, the city ordinance says you have the right to have 6 total signs, 5 directional signs, and 1 on the property. I have never heard of them ever finding somebody for doing 7 or 8 signs. And in some locations, you might need to have more signs because of the number of turns somebody has to make to get to a property. But just don't be excessive with your signage, because it could look bad for everybody in town if the city starts cracking down on excessive signs. Okay, the other thing that we mentioned about IDX earlier, so where do you get the information? How do I learn about this? How do I sign up for it, etc.? So back to that blue box in the corner here, and we have an IDX FAQ. So frequently asked questions about IDX, and then, oops, another arrow. Right above that is the IDX agreement, and over to the right of that is the approved IDX vendors. So we have, it's close to 50 different vendors that offer IDX solutions, because maybe you don't want yours to look like everybody else's. You don't want the standard Flex one. You want to have something that has a little more pizzazz. Well, you've got a number to choose from, and then you'd have to sign off on the agreements and things to do that. But all of this is included within your fees that gives you the ability to have an IDX site on your own personal website. But a lot of you being new probably don't have a personal website yet to have that IDX on there. So what do? Do you let people go to Zillow and Realtor.com where they advertise other agents? I wouldn't. I'd send them instead to probably the best site that we know is the most accurate, and that's SBAOR.com. So we have our own public-facing site, and I'll show you pictures. There's SBAOR.com right there, and you can put in the search criteria you're looking for, find a house, it'll come up, and if it's a new listing, it'll show that. If it has an open house scheduled for that weekend, it would show that. It does give the listing agents information on here because it needs to, for the benefit. If you have a listing, you want people to be able to call you about that listing. And then it has really nice displays, large photos, as you can see. You can scroll through them. It's probably a nicer display than Zillow or Realtor.com or any other site, and it has no advertising on it at all, and it's not trying to redirect people to someone else who pays the most for the advertising on their site. So if you don't have your own IDX site, which I recommend at some point you have your own IDX site, but if you don't, I'd recommend using SBAOR.com as your search site for your clients. You also can set up a search portal specifically through Flex. If you want to have a site where your client can come in and do searches, you can set that up right through a portal that's going to have your name and picture on it, available through Flex MLS. If you need more information on how to set that up, our MLS director can help you with that. All right, so that concludes the MLS portion.